This next part is my great honor to introduce our keynote speaker, who really doesn't need any introduction. I want to say there's only one and only one David Chan, but it turns out there's two at this meeting. But there's no mistaking our keynote speaker. In a word, I think I can, describe him as devoted. Devoted to his faith, to his science, and fortunately for us, devoted to Oscar. It turns out we have two mutual passions, which is bike riding and Oscar. So without further ado, Dr. David Chan.
Thank you so much. It's been such a long time. From my first trip to Vancouver, I met with 5 clinics. We were huddled around in a tiny room, and they were at the time when I think Peter was coming along, and they had to decide what EMR to pick. Somehow, Win got here, and that Oscar was a potential possibility, and we did what we could. But we didn't even make it to the Peter list. And to my just great encouragement, you guys beat all the odds. I mean, look at what happened to the 5 that was on the list, right? You guys just, with your passion, it's just unbelievable. So, I mean, I feel like I'm always part of this family. Before I begin, I usually declare my conflict of interest. I do have one. I'm on the board of the Open OSP. I'm on the board of the Open OSP, and that makes me the richest person on earth. But anyway, so my conflict is that I'm a little biased. I'm a little passionate. I use the same word about Oscar, and so as usual, I begin my talk with a little bit of an apologies. Sometimes words kind of fly out of my mouth if I offend anybody, especially people who work for government or maybe other industry. They're confined to what their company policy is supposed to do. And so if I offend anyone, my wife would explain, my face looked like I'm angry at you, but I'm not. Oh, anyway, so Oscar BC has been just a fantastic organization. Something that I wish we had in Ontario. When I was at McMaster and retired in 2016, and just when you guys decided, okay, maybe we have to, sort of do things our own way instead of relying on McMaster, and I agree. Like, I didn't leave McMaster because of I was upset about anything. I think I had an amazing career there. They had given me a lot of freedom, but to be honest with you, towards the end, it just didn't feel like I was in much control. And you guys might as well know about it from my own mouth. So whatever they did, it's not my fault. So please don't blame me on it. Oh, so I'm giving a nearly impossible job to predict the future of Oscar. And I found this thing online, of course. Learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Well, I mean, I do have a lot of story to tell from the past, and I'm still very much active. Today, I look after, a hospice as well as retirement home. I'm busy enough, and I'm a very active Oscar user. I'm still part of the listserv. So, but the point about questioning, so I just have a list here, and I hope in my short 1 hour, given that there is a session, a panel discussion, if you can hold off your question, because I have 4 other colleagues who are probably in a better position to answer your questions to help me out, right? And so I'll just kind of use my whole 45 minutes, or 1 hour, to try to go through some of the things that I hope I would leave you with. I mean, if today you walk out of here and say, oh, I had no clue what he's talking about, then I kind of fail. I hope you would have thoughts about, okay, wow, okay, I could probably be part of that, okay? And I'm trying to impress upon you that's, hopefully that's what this 1 hour would do. Now, how I got here, what is my open source journey? Trust me, completely, like by accident. Knowing a guy like Joseph Dalmolin, hang out with him and his few other friends who are open source advocates. I didn't even know what that word meant, right? And we held a little meeting. From then on, I was sold. I mean, it was just one of those really wonderful discovery. And you thought, okay, my life, I've found a nice little new purpose. So thanks to Joseph. And I'll just, this is the part I have to be very careful. There are winners and losers. And I might step on some toes, okay? Some other open source projects, why open source projects succeed, who are the stakeholders, what is the future of OSCAR, what happened to Kindred and K2A. Now you may say, what? Right, okay, I'll hopefully explain to you what they are. You might say they are the triads or the pillar, the pillars. Those are the other two pillars that somehow I like to blame others, but I think McMaster is kind of not pushed as hard as OSCAR, and anyway. So I'm gonna try to encourage you to think that those two are equally as important as the OSCAR you're using. Okay. So like everyone else today, if you are not familiar with OpenAI and stuff like that, I'm just gonna. This is sort of very small. It doesn't matter. It's just to impress upon you that I have kept up with time. I'm using artificial intelligence. So you ask a question something like a popular, okay, popular open source EMR. Now this represents the world's known knowledge that the artificial intelligence can pull together. And now it's going to give you a very narrative, a typical of, it says, okay. Now, I mean, I just did this morning, just to double check. Do you see OSCAR in there? Okay, there you go. It was number 2, and now it's changed, okay? Maybe it's just the way I asked the question, but you try it on your own computer, it would show that within the radar of this 5 or 6. And these are the ones that we are very familiar with. I think Joseph would be quite familiar with it. OpenMRS. Oh, okay, because
Free to wander, and you slip that on your belt shirt.
Okay, sure. Thank you. This is hard to keep me in one spot. But does it have too much feedback? I'm just going to risk it a little bit. Just tell me more. Okay, let's see if it'll change the answer. Now, part of my talk here is to show you that I know somebody would likely going to talk about AI future for OSCAR. Well, we're not quite there yet. But although I was trying to impress you that at least AI knows about OSCAR. Okay, so sorry. You risk it? Okay, so how I got here? Well, I'm ancient, or a dinosaur. When I graduated in electrical engineering in 1974, before some of you were born, there were, Intel made a 4-bit CPU, 4004. And I paid $10,000 for an 8008 little development system that works with punch tapes and toggle switches to try to put your instruction in. So forget about keyboard. So that was how there was no computer science department. So now, of course, you move on to i9 and 16 core or 32 core, or as I recently discovered, a tiny little little thing like this costs less than 20 bucks on Amazon. It's got 2 cores. It's got built-in Wi-Fi. It's got built-in Bluetooth, you name it. I mean, this thing can run, and I'll just show you. One thing that in my retirement, I'm able to do is in my house, it's fully monitored by a ton of this little guy. Each one of them burns 1 watt, okay? It's like less than your night light. And I mean, I monitor my solar panel, my, you name it. It's all internet speed, up there. So, I mean, it's unbelievable. The world has changed so much. Oh, don't ask me to speak, in another 30 years. I have no idea what it would be like. So, whatever you're going to hear, it's a little speculative, to put it mildly. And then somehow my life changed. I decided to go into medicine. In 1983, I graduated from medical school, University of Toronto, and my graduation project, it's called computerized genogram. Of course, I have a computer programming background, so that's it. That's still my, if you can find a computer to run it, it's cute. It allows you to put a genogram, using BASIC. It's 140K of memory. And comparing to this, which you can pick up 2 terabytes, okay? It's a little bit of a progress. And I think one of the things is I value these progress. Whatever I used to fear a lot. I was afraid of the world going to come to an end, this and that. And the reality is that we're living in very good times, I think mostly. I hope to be more optimistic about the future. And so when I first became an academic, in order to get access knowledge, the explosion of articles, you have to wait a minimum of a year for them to package them into a little silver platter. And when that arrived, you feel like, okay, now I'm going to be smarter than my students. You put it on the, you can even search. But of course, 30 years ago, World Wide Web came about. I mean, I lived through the best of times. It just really, whoa, I can do Medline search, right? I'm connected to the world. So a very quick rundown of this. OSCAR isn't my first attempt. It's got a few other attempts. So, and OSCAR is just a product of what I learned over time. The first one was in my first job as an academic person in Chinese University of Hong Kong back in 1986. I have an XT clone, like most clones that come from Hong Kong that violate all the copyright thing. And that's all we have, right? I mean, it's a standalone in my clinic room. I use a database system called Advanced Revelation. It turned out to be just an amazing database system. Runs DOS, okay? And it, I nicely name it as CMR, Computerized Medical Record 1.0. There was no 2.0, okay? By then I had already left to go to McGill, which is the second one. But before I got there, I published a few articles, and because I'm academic, publish or perish. And one of them reached the ears of this Australian College of General Practitioners, and they were very keen. They were very interested. So I got to be invited and spoke in Melbourne and met lots of GPs. I think they were almost all GPs, and they were very keen. Many of them super smart. They gave ideas, and so there was lots of interest. And I learned about things like problem-oriented medical record, the importance of don't randomly put stuff in your database and read them out. You try to link them together and try to find important answers to, especially common diseases, which GP knows a lot, right? And trying to begin to understand this commonest thing, like common codes, right? I mean, little things like that. Which one of the things that we discovered is about a third of the problems with common codes is not with the patient, it's with the patient's parent. So, I mean, it's sort of interesting little things that you learn about things that you're supposed to do all the time. In '88, I came back to Canada and went to McGill. It's my second academic job. And of course, what do I do? I mean, the one thing I was really good at is computer programming, and so I had a laptop. Well, you might call it a luggable thing. That was so heavy. You don't put it on your thighs, it may burn your skin there. So I did all the programming. So I did what I did in Hong Kong and extended with a network. In those days, a Novell network, right? Which, by the way, Novell has since adopted Linux, just like IBM. So, but it was the best networking system at that point. Again, people want it, they get it, so it's a freeware. I had no idea how to give away things. But I began to run muffin workshops because of popularity. I ran it in Hong Kong and ran it in Australia. It was sort of like, oh, okay, it seems to attract people. So, lots of smart people out there. Importance of classification system. Not only do you have to link them together, then you have to learn, call an apple, an orange, an orange, and when you communicate with each other, you have to speak English rather than French. Just all of those messaging standards and classification system. All of those standards are very important. So I learned that, but I also learned that a name is important. McGill thinks that muffin is going to make them rich, because it stands for. That's how I call my 3 little girls. Hi, little muffins, right? Then you have to try to imagine words that are part of it. It's McGill University Family Photo Information Network. And, to this day, the lawyer said, it's owned by McGill. So when I went to McMaster, my third phase, you would think, oh, perfect, M and M, McMaster. We just call it different. No. So it's an interesting, it was quite an exercise just to really come to the name called Oscar. I try to eliminate not even names of universities, but even countries, right? Open source, if there is no country involved. But again, it's the opportunities. At that time, Ontario was going through primary care reform. And one of the things they believe in is that since apparently at that time, Canada ranked the lowest among the OECD countries in terms of EMR adoption. We were just Stone Age country, right, when it comes to EMR. So the government learned that the reason is that doctors don't want to invest money in it. So hand out money. Well, thanks. McMaster got $1 million. Instead of buying something, I had a boss who said, David, since you've already done all that, why don't you do this, right? So I still remember those days trying to get the government approve our product. I was in Kingston. I don't know how many of you in Kingston with the lake, and it was a hazy day, and here I was, trying to get the $1 million using muffin, because that's the only thing I had at the time. One thing, I managed to crash the OHIP system, the insurance system, by opening up way too many windows, too many things. I mean, that goes to show our government system sucks, right, when it comes to this sort of thing. But anyway, but lo and behold, we were approved, and with $1 million, it was the best chunk of money I've ever had. We decided to skip Windows, don't go back to DOS, and we jumped right to the web. At that point, it was quite mature. The Java language and all those things, they were all really well established. They are no longer somebody's garage, toy, right? And so we, in about 6 to 9 months, we actually moved out OSCAR 1.0, and we, at Maternity Center, it's also run by McMaster, so it was a perfect little setup for it. You should see the opening day for the clinic. For the first time, paperless, day one. You don't believe in trying to scan everything. It's opening, it's a perfect setup for it. And it was an instant success. And our first customer was an OBGYN from Mississauga, and she said, I want it. Because we designed as you know today, the maternity e-form, antenatal care record 1.0. We actually designed that one. And we wrote in a couple of research questions and trying to understand, how good each of those little things that you're supposed to do Of course, you're told you have to ask all these questions. You have to examine all these things. And every time they come in, every month, you have to supposed to do this. But we never told why, right? And so we were building in our little research questions into it. But most important question is that we discover when we started handing out the maternity, the antenatal care record to the people that we serve, which were underserviced people. You know, the digital divide, Well, no, everybody came in, access the internet at least once a week. They just go to the library. They don't have to have a computer. They don't have cell phones, right? But I mean, it was not a barrier at all. And just by having that little electronic, or in paper, we print out for them, it just helps with, a lot of continuity of care, and we learn a few things. So all of those things help us to think about, really, OSCAR is a research engine for us, okay? And then I bumped into Joseph, and then he invited me to go to Los Angeles for an open source healthcare alliance. It's a conference, and it was the first time OSCAR was released. It was very, very exciting. When you see a ding, because we have a map of all the downloads, 2 of them came from Mongolia. It's like, you think that there are hungry people everywhere watching for these things. And boom, 400 download, I think, in the first week. It was just, people would just can't wait. They need something like this, right? So that was a big encouragement. And then words went to the UK, and they had a fairly open mind about open source thing. And then they invited me to speak on the success of Muffin and OSCAR, right? And I call it a tale of 2 cities. Play on the French and the English and the Montreal and Hamilton thing, and then talk about really my own journey, how innovation comes, it's the best of times, it's the worst of time. When we had no money at McGill, I had like $3,000 to start the project, and lots of hours at home trying to program this to fit, the system, and it worked really quite well. And then with learning about the FOSS, or free and open source system licensing, it's a great learning thing. I don't know if you know it. I mean, I tell you, it's to use copyright law to protect this for absolutely the opposite of what copyright was intended to do. That's why it's often called the copyleft. You protect the users, not the owners of it. You protect them so they're confident they can use it, so that 10 years from now, when you become rich and famous, people aren't going to come after you. Oh, no, the software, you violated the licensing agreement. No, the license is for you, to protect you, the users, right? And so some cute pictures, this is the UCLA CIO, Bill. He taught me one thing. He said, well, you know why the CIOs don't like open source stuff? Because they only want 2 things. And I see this repeated over and over again, right? One, they want to sleep well at night, meaning they don't want to tinker with something that if something fails, it's going to come back to him. Number 2, they want someone else to blame. Usually a big company. When as you know, how many scandals do we need in Canada, right? I mean, they just always point to, oh yeah, this and that. It's never my fault. But I mean, to really want to do to use it, and he knows it. That's why he's supporting us. And I say UCLA, really, I like to talk about we're next door to Hollywood. So OSCAR, Hollywood, it's all kind of cute. But if you remember the password MAC 202, if you ever download it, install it yourself, the default is MAC 202, pin is 1117. Well, because it was released in year 2002. November 17th. So that's one way for us to keep track. And then, of course, in 2013, with help of BC users, we initiated the Oscars. And we missed that in those days. I see a number of Oscar winners here. And you know who you are. It's how you be part of this community and contribute. And in some ways, we will honor that every year. But this particular one, for the first time in 2013, OSCAR has been recognized as a major player in the EMR industry. Clearly, numbers of use of OSCARs have proven that something is in the wind. OSCAR gets an Oscar. So, like I said, I didn't know anything about open source. You can call it freeware, shareware, all kinds of different ways of thing. But to really know about the open source licensing, I call it the gift wrapping of a software. It's not so easy to just give something away. You want to give something away to protect the users. And to gift wrap that, you have to go through lawyers and you have to get the proper licensing. And to this day, we still struggle. Somebody who sneak around, we had GPL version 2, but now they're doing this. You need a GPL version 3 to, on and on and on. So it's still complicated, but the mechanism is robust. It's meant to serve the users. And so I was told in the last 5 years before my retirement in 2016, my boss bragged about it, $30 million of research grant. It's directly or indirectly attributed to OSCAR. Now we have fulfilled our mission. Unfortunately, someone in the department start thinking of this being a source of income for McMaster, and it gets kind of, okay. So when we get a big grant, they always have meetings that I can't go because I have supervised residents, and I kind of get the point. So okay, so the next 2 projects, which I was supposed to tell you, began as open source project. The PHR was called My Oscar. In fact, I'm going to show you a paper. We work very closely with MIT and Harvard, and and I was with the National Research Council. Think about it, okay? In 2004. Is it before some of you were born? I mean, I don't know. It's just, we set a goal at the National Research Council that by 2004, every child born in Canada would be given a birth certificate and a personal health record. Can you imagine? Wow. Suddenly, I refused to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and boom, my office was locked. It was finished. To this day, I had no idea why the project was finished. I mean, it was built around OSCAR, and we did a major demo in New Brunswick, and to illustrate how accessing healthcare service is like, built around an IT infrastructure, right? It was brilliant. But apparently, the director at NRC was telling me that they always have to have the 3 things. 1, the project has to be brilliant and research-based, but it has to have commercial support. And obviously, we weren't thinking a whole lot about big companies trying to make a mint out of this, right? And so, anyway, so we have accomplished our academic mission, and sadly, especially now that I'm out of the picture, I email the executive director, what's the update for PHR and K2A, and I didn't hear anything. Both of these, now Kindred, PHR, and Know to Act. Oh, by the way, Know to Act used to be an open source project called My Drug Ref, because it was focused primarily on drug in the beginning, and my youngest daughter was a programmer for it, and it meant, and she once worked for Shopify. I mean, when she graduated, she was barely in high school, so it was well done, I think, at the time. But they've all been rewritten into proprietary programs. Kindred, PHR, and Know to Act, they're proprietary. So with that, I kind of abolished my retirement plan, which is to contribute to building e-forms and really smart forms, smart clinical tools, because I have no idea where they're going to go, right? And so anyway, so that's where they're at right now. So I mean, I also in my journey, one of my my favorite line is that when you walk around Toronto, and, well, I don't know Vancouver too, you see one of these homeless person, chances are this person has an Oscar record. This is in comparison to all the Bay Street, people in three-piece suit. If they're lucky, they may have a family doctor who had a electronic record. But I mean, I like to call it a leveling of the playing field. It was just so, for me, it was just amazing to think. And the street workers would go around, do their photo recognition, and pull up and say, oh yeah, this guy was just in a shelter yesterday. And the director of the project was telling me that, oh, tomorrow it's going to be a big, heavy snowstorm. There'll be 340 people with schizophrenia who are going to look for beds. I mean, you can do all these amazing things to help those who are obviously very much in need of help, right? And guess why they picked Oscar? Because it was dirt cheap. They hired a bunch of programmers. To this day, you may still know some of them, because they came to McMaster, sat down and said, we're going to be good Oscar players. We're going to build stuff, right? But then, of course, some of you may know, they built Casey, which is a variant of Oscar. It was hard to pull them back together. It was difficult. But when you think about the way they built Casey, or the case management system, is they began with protecting the identity of the private health information to the nth degree. But still based on the same Oscar platform, it was very hard to do. And that's why later on, I learned from MIT is that you begin by having one record for each person. You protect it like you would protect an electronic medical record for a bunch of patients. It just happens that single EMR has only one patient, who's the patient, and the one administrator, who is also the patient. But you do everything that you can. Okay, you say, okay, well, maybe people don't necessarily need such complexity. Well, you only need one or two people to say, okay, well, my record's now on global news. I mean, you just only need, right? So you begin with the right thing, and hopefully you build on that, right? So the other ones that I love it, and people like Earl, different people have really helped out in the community. It's that the refugee clinic, which I also helped start it, begin with a fully electronic record serving the refugee population. And then the working with the rehab department, we started the I Am Able YMCA free clinic, OT and PT clinic. Again, these are all Oscar clinics. And of course, some of the data migration, when we had to upgrade, sorry, point finger. He said, well, I'll help. And I said, well, how much would it cost? He said, nothing. The kind of spirit here is just amazing, right? So they're still using it. And I just use all the rejects computer from the clinic, because I still have connection with all the IT people, and they have the beautiful iMacs. They were the white kind, so they're not, but they're all running Linux, but they were all still working very well, right? So in the beginning, Brazil government committed 6 programs just because they knew what we were doing, and they were the one who were instrumental to make sure that Oscar would be I-18N compliant. I didn't even know that until they told me. It's language independent. When you put up a browser and say, I want it in French, suddenly the whole EMR turns to French, right? As well as a back-end database. We some of you, if you're a bit more technically inclined, we invest totally into MySQL, but Oscar is capable of running any back-end database. Like Casey in Toronto, they use Oracle, right? Because the city of Toronto uses Oracle, so they just borrow that, right? Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's one of my little prayer reminders to keep your anger down, right? So I deep down believe that the reason for open source is that we did not have the necessary know-how. As much as I'm a graduate in software and all that, but hey, I kept meeting people who talk about things I said, what? I had never heard of that, right? So main asset is the community. I often would throw the concept that the strength of OSCAR is not on the number of the millions of lines of codes of smart programming. It's how you put it into clinical practice. If it your success is measured by whether your patient would benefit. Now I know David Page is not here. For example, he designed a page called Chronic Renal Disease E-form or whatever, right? And out of that, we managed to get a grant from the Ontario Renal Network. And it turned into a research project to make sure that guidelines that is based on 3 authoritative guidelines put together in one E-form, it's truly, what is helpful, what is grade A recommendation, grade B, so you kind of take a pick, just sort of like your antenatal record. It evolved into, okay, if you have 5 minutes, you got to do these both phases, right? Because they are more benefit than harm, and then you're going to focus on that, right? And that level of usability, right? And this serve you should be part of, and I know it's a bit busy still, but I mean you learn to skim over most things. So who are the winners and losers? Well, where are they now? It's a good question. Some of these, you have your list of 5, and we have our list of 5 in Ontario. They're all gone. Okay, people, usually the early adapters, people who are keen, they get the government money, they get a contract with one of these, and then guess what happened to them? They all are stuck, and they had to change. And I had clinics who easily changed 3 times because can you imagine the pain of having to do this? Because they're gone, like gone, okay? I still remember a major announcement from the Infoway Canada, Clinic Care in Sault Ste. Marie, communicating with pharmacy, millions and millions of dollars. What happened to it? Clinic Care is gone. I mean, whatever the investment they had left nothing to benefit anybody else, really. Anyway, so, and the landscape kept changing. Somebody bought somebody, Loblaw bought QHR and then sold it to shoppers. It just, yeah. And at the end, anybody from well here? I mean, I don't mean it to be a negative thing. But anyway, so I'm just saying is that the reality is that if you are serving a board of directors, that at some point you're going to find it difficult. And I feel sorry for you. It's like you can only do so much because the bottom line, they're all made up in the board somewhere. And so it's hard, okay? And guess who survived through the years? OSCAR, right? Despite lack of certification, I don't know what's happened to PEI. PEI got me all excited. Victoria got me all excited, coast to coast to coast, right? But it required some local enthusiasts to continue, like in BC. So, well, given my last attempt, I'll just tell you at one point I searched OpenGPT, and it talks about why some open source succeed, okay? And I throw in some examples which I'm still very much part of, in the other community, active engaging community, Git. Like, it's the biggest repository of free stuff. Almost invariably, you end up over there and download their code and try it out. Linux, Ubuntu, Linux Mint has replaced many of my usual day-to-day work. I mean, it's as good as Mac OS and Microsoft, as far as I'm concerned. Firefox, Python as a programming language, or PHP. So all these are good examples, and they're not hobbyist things. WordPress, apparently the most popular content management system, according to ChatGPT. So you never know who's fact-checking them, right? And so anyway, so the general idea is that open source projects are in very good position, especially given given the the scenario in software industry being expensive, being, full of conflict of interest, sort of hiring different people. Like in Ontario, the most famous one is the Smart System for Health, right? Spending $1 billion with the B. And the Auditor General said, and has nothing to show. Now, I mean, this is a very big accusation, but it is true. You have expensive consultants, and they point finger as, oh, your specification didn't say that. Okay, yeah. The OSCAR service providers, I know there were fewer and fewer of us, but I always remind people they're always keen ones. I always refer to Earl is willing to do just about anybody. He's just helpful, okay, and he's very reasonable. So you don't necessarily have to have big office and stuff, but there will be always people around like that. eHealth agencies, they want things done. Without OSCAR, they cannot get any of their mission done. Integration product, you might know, appointment appointment system, and you name it, okay. Help you with billing, help you with this, help you with that. Sorry, my time is 10:45. Oh, thank you. Because I'm not even half finished. So, patient, especially in low-resource communities, whenever I see a photo like somebody's going to fly into a Native community with OSCAR and their little laptop, and from one flight to the next, that's about the only way to organize the health of that community. Or, as some of you may or may not know, I've had people from Chilliwack, and they go down to Haiti, and they would take a laptop with OSCAR down there. I personally were involved in a Congo, setting up a missionary's computer so that he can go down there and run in his clinic. So it's all very exciting. Educational institutions, more and more people are using OSCAR as a tool to teach programming and introduce concepts, right? And so you would find that these are all stakeholders. So I was going to do this again. Facing a lot of challenges. At some point, all the money we spend, where's the evidence that it actually did anything, right? I mean, I often quote President Obama's statement about the investment, because the country got themselves in a bad situation. The government had to invest money to stimulate the economies, and they chose to push money into EMR, because he thinks that by doing that, you're going to reduce duplication, improve health, reduce, whatever. But if you look at each one of them, you would say, so where's the data? Have we done it, right? So there are good folks and bad folks, and apparently you're going to do a little bit about that. Eye on special needs community and patients who serve, but not the market share. Oh, can you hit stop? Or you can stop praying. So maybe it's OSCAR USA. Where is it now? I mean, it's just, we deal with so many unbelievable people over the years. They send people up for training, and McMaster is not going to do this for free. And at the end, oh yeah, we have no money. Okay, go back. And of course, they never follow through. They rewrite stuff, and they never contribute back. And so, but where is it now? It's gone. Indivica, I hope none of you work for Indivica, because they were the biggest. It's sort of like the well in Ontario, right? We say, come on, you have to share what you've done, and sometimes we'll sue you if you ask too many times, or they'll dump gazillion lines of code that our programmer found wouldn't work. It's just not good, okay? And where is it now, right? Make a few bucks and go away, right? So, like I said, I'm on the board of directors. It gives me something exciting in my retirement years. It's a co-op. But I mean, I hope that all the other vendors work well together. It's just that I I find it a little easier, to work at a co-op. And so, anyway, beware of these proprietary hooks, okay? I know many of you will be tempted. Somebody come up with a solution. I'll use one example. In Ontario, a big family health team work with Microsoft. They're going to provide the web access to, it's really a portal. I'll explain a little bit more about what personal health record is. It's not something that the OSCAR owners would open up a little window for a Microsoft product to tap your data to show it to patients. I mean, it's again, where is it now? At some point, you're going to find it doesn't go anywhere because you're sharing with another organization that doesn't share your objectives. So you learn that one of the biggest jobs that we have is to protect the patient's personal health record. And innovation involves the OSCAR community. Don't try to do it alone. Right? Okay, so anyway, okay, let me just do it one more time. At some point, you're going to find that it may be useful for something. Okay, and I'll show you, like programming. It's actually quite amazing. I can write a program, totally asking ChatGPT to give me in MicroPython a certain code to do what, and lo and behold, it almost completely worked, right? So, what was I going to say? Oh, well, you know what? Never mind. I was going to say the future of OSCAR, and it will come up with something interesting. So the other thing we learn to predict what happened in the future is things that didn't work. And here I would sound like I'm blaming on McMaster's management. When we got like $9 million from Health Canada to do a personal health record, the job, this is public money, and you see me exactly a bit like this in the management meeting. You're using public money supposed to serve the public. I mean, this is basically, see, my face would be very angry. And no, they want to change it, rewrite the whole thing. It's more modern. They spent 6 digits in a Toronto lab to completely change the user interface because there's little lines and, they're a little too old-fashioned, right? I accept certain things, like it's not good for colorblind people. So, but whatever. They change it all to a Twitter bootstrap because it's Twitter being so hot. Everything looks and feels like Twitter, okay? Except I don't think Twitter was designed for medical records, right? So, anyway, so millions of dollars later, where is it now? It's out there somewhere. You may actually know it. You can go to your preference. You can say, choose new interface. But you wouldn't last more than 2-3 minutes. And you say, what the heck is this thing, right? It's not helping me, right? The few failure of the governance structure. OSCAR EMR is gone, and I'm glad you guys took the baton in 2016, and you need something locally that serves local interests. You work with the local government. You get local government grant to try to accomplish health objectives. You want to do these things, in much more meaningful fashion. To try to, when they start out talking about membership fee, it sounds awfully like licensing fees. It's just so. And lo and behold, they registered OSCAR McMaster and threatened everybody if you do not put the word there, because we're gonna make you accountable for it, right? So it's not something that I think helps with OSCAR, but still it's still very vibrant user developer community, and again, what happened to these two products? So let me just tell you a little bit of story. John mentioned one shared interest was cycling, and I'm a pretty good cyclist, right? I do triathlons and stuff like that. And one day, as I was cycling on a familiar dirt road to St. Patrick's, where I do barbecue for homeless people. I do this every Friday. I know the trail completely, okay? And I was riding my own bike, and boom, I woke up at the Hamilton General Hospital. Thus began a journey that is totally unfamiliar to me. Now I'm a user. And anyway, so a number of specials later, and probably $1 million workup later, nobody has a clue. I had some intracranial hemorrhage, but I was fine for a period of time, for several months. In fact, I went on to a Croatia cycling trip with legs kind of patched up. But it was fine, and then afterwards, boom, start throwing up, lost 40 pounds. I looked like a concentration camp person, and sick as a dog for months. And still no clue. The GI guy said, you were throwing up, but I've done all the thing. I don't think what it is. It's not a post-concussion thing. Neither does the neurologist know what it is. But being a scientist myself, so I meticulously sort of follow my own, all the cycling time and all that. My wife is the one who insisted I have a cyclical vomiting syndrome. Well, you know, whenever you call something a syndrome, that means you know nothing about it. It just describes what happened, right? And so, anyways, to this day, don't know. Except, I would, you know, being a bit of a religious person, I'll tell you that on the Easter, several months later, Saturday, I couldn't even get up from my bed when my grandson was in for a sleepover. And on Easter Sunday, you put 0 across down here, boom, it's gone. Now, okay, so, you know, I like to think that my wife has been praying hard. She's a good person to pray for me, so I did too. But I mean, hey, to this day, I had nothing. So anyway, so the point is, the information we gathered, my family doctor, my specialist, and none of them really would help answer the question. Okay, or maybe there's not going to be an answer, because if you say this is a miracle, you have to send it all the way to Vatican to. Apparently, they really investigated to make sure absolutely no other things is in play. But the point is, you know, I said there is no system for me, and at that point, I had already been using a tool called Nextcloud. Nextcloud came out of a group of people who really didn't like the big IT company dominating. You know, I had data in I don't know how many places, Dropbox, all my photo thing, Google Drive, iCloud, Microsoft One something. You know, just all over the place. And whenever I try to find something, the first thing is to try to figure out where would I have put it. It just gets to be crazy, okay? So I got interested in this Nextcloud, and sure enough, over the years, it's amazing. And now you have big government, like agencies, like French government, German government. You know, they completely move off this big cloud platform and host their own Nextcloud. So, well, here I am, you know, I'm exiting from here, right? And you know, I know it's not much comparing to John here, because he said he's got 2 terabytes, but I've got 604.7 gigabytes of the 300 blogs that I wrote, and all my academic papers, the media folder of my little kids with spaghetti sauce all over their face, video converted, everything is now here. I don't pay 1 nickel to any of the big tech company, right? So, and over time, this thing just refresh and keep update itself. It's quite interesting. Okay, now I'm not selling you this, and in fact, the title for my next talk later is called Nextcloud OSCAR 2.0 with a question mark. Well, I like to think that you begin with the personal health record first. if I have to start from beginning, OSCAR begins with the patient. Then we built what we need to build in our own clinic to run a clinic efficiently, but it's always going to be your clinical judgment and the patient's, all kinds of stuff. So, I'll talk more about that. But anyway, so Kindred is something that I learned, or my OSCAR, it's what I learned from, I'll get there, yeah, from MIT and Harvard, very smart people, right? I mean, they had begun this thing way back in 2000 or earlier, and trying to understand how healthcare can be completely different than the way that we understand it today, okay? Which begins with the patient at the center. I teach patient-centered care. It's a bit of a joke, right? I mean, by the time my residents goes out, they're running off their feet. Probably not so much the last thing, but a lot of times the last thing is to worry about what the patient, needs, right? So it's the current understanding of personal health record you see today is that they're actually portals, meaning the database is owned and controlled by the provider. And you open a little window for your patient to see, and it often lacks knowledge translation. You show the raw data, the lab result. What do they know about it? How do they understand it? And then person control one, the patient own and control it. The data integration from a variety of sources. One of the slides that I give to the grad school is the idea of integration, the way Canada Health Infoway would imagine. Two systems talk to each other. They need to agree on their terminology and the messaging and all that. And in order for thousands, if not tens of thousands of systems to talk to each other, and every one of them you have to solve this problem, it's, I thought it was an n factorial problem, which is essentially you just won't solve it. Okay, you just can't do it. But if all of them only need to integrate with one, which is the patients, now that is a different problem. Now, I was invited to talk at the Cleveland clinic, and they just built this amazing neuro ICU, okay, tens of millions of dollars, and they even have their own privacy officer. Their problem is that the instrument cannot talk to each other. And you still have a nurse, usually a nurse, going around, look at a number and write it down, put it on this computer. But they said, in an ICU, it's the beat-to-beat variation that is determining the outcome. You cannot sample it so infrequently and get anything out of it, right? So it's everyone would talk to only one, okay? That's easy. You develop a product, you only need to talk to the patient's record. That's it, okay? And then it's an app platform that most of you are familiar with. You just add another app, and you would want an app that really helps you. Now I'll use an example later. Again, the foundational quality of any electronic medical record, things like accessibility, private and secure, transparent, auditable. I'll use an example of how we can solve the problem of a vaccine passport. How it's not very popular because people are suspicious of data going to the cloud, right? So how do you use something like this to actually help people navigate through very difficult, we sometimes call it the tropics of medicine. It's just, even my own example, right? It's just very difficult. It captures holistic. How many times have you been taught, oh yeah, socioeconomic, those things are really important, and then we ignore it completely, right? Where do you get those information? You don't get it from the current health system, the official health system. They don't collect those information. So the three killer app, if you want to call it, you know how the the Apple computer became very sort of popular even in commercial setting, is that they have found VCCal, which is a spreadsheet. Apparently that was their killer app. So I found over the years doing research and trying to understand what other people are doing, these are the three things that would get buy-in. You know, if you got the three, patient will use it. Okay, it may be only one or two, but this usually covers a lot of the reason why people would use it. And when you look at anyone's life, would go through it like that, one app is not useful at one point, but it's extremely useful in another. So you have to see that life as a continuity thing, and that's the Tapestry logo. We got something like $5 million or whatever it is to try to understand, and we tested in different populations to try to understand which app actually would help them the most. So you now see the whole eHealth patient being at the center, okay? And then you have clinic apps. They make appointments. They do things. They synchronize. You've just been discharged from the hospital. All that is copied to you. Wellness. How popular is that? Most of you are wearing one of these that are continuously capturing real-time data, but we hardly ever use these. And then research app. I truly believe that the people who love big data, because they think AI is going to help them, give them amazing solution. But I tell you, the evidence is unfortunately lacking, okay, how much good it actually does. But not if you begin to have patients donating their data, the willing participant, the informed consent. They only could give you what you need and not everything else, right? So when you think about apps that are like that, you can assemble, give me a randomized controlled trial of anybody who's got this but not that. You can easily answer questions. And then there are care apps. Now, we sometimes call them flow sheet and stuff, but why not? Okay, to start with. But at some point they're gonna want a little bit more personal. They choose. Don't show me my sugar number, because what I want is to be able to see where I can kick the soccer ball. I can do this. I focus on function. Different people want different things in life. Why not, right? So my idea, borrowed from MIT and Harvard, is that when your patient is in the middle, you have to solve all these problems right now because that's where they are, right? But is it, you have to define this in a way that other people can play. Fitbit, I already can pull Fitbit into Nextcloud. You can do things like that, right? Apparently, if you try to go to Kindred PHR, it's been shut down for months. McMaster and they promised that I was going to get the code. I asked, but I don't, I really don't hold my breath for this anymore, right? I'm going to start something, right? Learning what I had already learned from this. But I mean, all these orange colors, it's not like they're Dutch, but somebody in Toronto charged millions, not millions, hundreds of $1,000 to use usability. I had no idea the color, right? And then so you can decide. For example, who else would be under this care? Typically, parents with young children, they begin with their personal health record residing in your server, and then when they're ready, they move off and they get their own, right? So anyway, so the next one is the know to act. With the explosion of all clinical knowledge and stuff like that, it's really hard to keep up. I mean, I still catch myself saying things that I learned as a resident. Well, that is not good. Okay, by now I should be more thoughtful and carefully think through exactly why I still think that way, right? But what you want is something that integrates with the EMR, the knowledge from the user, trusted sources. Now, it uses a social networking structure, meaning you come to trust someone. Just like when you walk into an elevator, you're not going to talk to just by any specialist. Say, oh, John, how do you deal with this? John's sitting over there. Because you trust him. This guy is serious. He's not going to lead you down the wrong path, right? So overall, you begin to build up your own little network of support. And you just basically, I trust this person. So this person's posting on the Note to Act comes to me. I'll give you an example. When a birth control pill had much higher risk of thromboembolism, Health Canada sent out a warning. And I got this at Met Effect, it's an email notifying. I saw it, oof, immediately put it onto Note to Act, and all of my people, which unfortunately, if you join Note to Act, your default is that you trust David Chan. Because you have to trust at least one person. Otherwise, you would always have blank, and then you don't like that, right? So I was the default. But you can always untrust me as soon as you get your feet wet. And so I posted it there, and immediately, now, nothing is that immediate. But whenever I do this demonstration to all these academic visitors, the jaw drop. What? What you just did now shows up on my EMR. Right? When a patient comes in and say, okay, you need to renew this meds, boing, there's a note. Well, more than that, right? When my pharmacist, I'm part of a team, said, oh, well, you know what? Thumbs up, she gave me an endorsement. And she said, if your patient comes in, this would be a good alternative. Now, suddenly I learned something from my pharmacist, and now all of my trusted people learn from that. Okay, so I mean this is how it was constructed, but most people would never go to the website because you don't, unless you're keen and you start reading papers and then you start feeling the urge of sharing it with others, you would never visit the website. What you do is that in your OSCAR, depending on whose OSCAR you're getting, there's a setup for Note to Act. It automatically comes in. It used to be that at the very least is your drug-drug interaction and drug warnings, at the very least. But I don't know where they are at now. Different organizations decided what comes in, what doesn't. Okay, and you have to talk to your OSP to make sure you at least get a feel of it. Okay, so these are actionable knowledge at the point of care. Okay, and just a little summary. And at McMaster, we designed, a sponsor, meaning, like a pharmaceutical said, if anybody's using my product, tell them they can apply to a free sample, so whatever it is, right? And in return, I'll give you some money to add that onto it. But it's still not a forced adoption. Like, not everybody would get it. You have to be saying, you know what, I specialize in this. I want all these class of medication. I don't mind getting a notification, right? So you can choose to do it. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of a run through for how some of these things are simply amazing. Okay, you may not know about it, but this is some of the examples. By the way, if anybody wants a copy of this, you can get it from Joelle. I'll just send it to her. So, again, I'll try this. If you go to you open AI, and you say, okay, I've got an 80-year-old person, man, who has a bit of trauma, and he's worrying about Parkinson's. Okay, and on further questioning, he was a little rigid. Not much mask-like feature. A little bit of cartwheeling, question mark. So this is what we go through, right? We do the exam and do all that. You go glabellar tap, you see eye blinks and things like that. And then at the end, you say, you know what, so what do I do? I mean, this is what clinical medicine is all about. You've been taught that a constellation of things, you have some, you don't have some. At the end, how confident are you when you tell your patient you may or may not have the problem? And it's not easy. But anyway, so without doing that and running the risk of actually, so yeah, I'm going to skip through these couple of slides. You know, the 80-year-old man, so Parkinson's disease. So you ask a general question, you get a very general answer. At the end, they say basically, you know what, you need to see a specialist to see if you are sick or not, right? So apparently, a couple of smart doctors in Toronto, they said, well, if ChatGPT can do that, we're going to get ChatGPT to focus on health things. So they came up with a company called Hippo AI, right? And this is the answer they give. A little bit more ordering tests that you and I never even heard of, okay? A little bit more of those things. But still, generally at the end, it doesn't really help your patient who's in front of you shaking the hands, okay? So now, NodoAct. How would NodoAct help? Okay, let me just show you what NodoAct looks like. You know, you log in. You have to set up your account. It's very simple. Okay, it's user account. You go there and you notice the postings is now 2019 by who's that from? Is that by John? Well, John did a lot of those postings. John R. Okay, John R. You see how on EM Reach, you know, all these stuff. Okay, so I haven't posted for a long time, but this one I posted a long time ago, and so evidence may not be totally up to date. But the process is just that I did what I usually do in teaching evidence-based medicine is you learn how to search the literature, and you find the best evidence, and then you try to interpret those evidence in ways that are usable. Okay, so I did all that, and if you do explore, and you, okay, obviously I've been out a little too long. Clinical tools and diagnosis. Okay. Now, if you use a website, it seems a bit tedious, but if these things are piped into you, you would bypass all these clicking. And then you search for Parkinson's, okay? Diagnosis, okay. Now, this is one study. It's a very popular JAMA series called "Do I Have Such a Condition?" It's very popular. Most residents are really because it puts things into a much more, they're difficult, but they're actually more scientific framework. Because every one of these questions that you ask, or every exam you do, carries with it its diagnostic precision. Okay, how good is it? Don't tell me, you know, oh yeah, if you got 3 out of 4, yeah, it's 66%. Well, maybe as good as it gets, but I'm saying, in general, if you can actually go through, for example, before I did this, I never asked a question about trouble turning in bed. And yet, trouble turning in bed is a history, carries the highest positive likelihood ratio. Okay? But it's not very, if it is negative, it doesn't help you. Okay? It's just sort of 50-50. But it's good to rule it in, right? But it's not good to rule it out. So it's like that. And so part of that, the tool also helps you, and that's what OSCAR is an amazing tool, because it actually helps you with your pre-test likelihood. Because if you base your patient population, let's say you've got 180 plus year old per person, and you say how many of them actually have Parkinson's, that forms your kind of pre-test prevalence, right? Likelihood. Well, typically they're 1 to 3%, okay? In most family practice level. Let's say I'll just call it 1%, 0.01. Oh, 100% pretest, so 0.01. 1%, okay. So before you know anything about this patient, now imagine you may have this E-form right now in front of you, But mostly these things operate in the background. It actually knows a lot of the answers before you even, except for the physical and some of the peculiar history thing. So what happened is, if you notice when I click, oh, do you have tremor? You say, yeah. So now, how likely are you? Right? Well, you're from 1%, you're up to 1.394%. Trust me, you cannot do this by hand. Don't even try. You have to convert to odds, and then you have to, it just forget it, right? But more than that, because the precision, how useful the test is, depends on the confidence interval. And every one of them, 5 minutes left, okay, builds on this confidence interval or lack of. Right? And if you say rigidity, well, yeah, you do have it. So you're going up, okay? And you say, I'm running late in this claim. I'm going to ask one more question because I'm going to have to send you off. Let's say you might even have shuffling gait, but you don't have trouble turning in bed, but you do have trouble opening jars, okay? And so where are you at now? Okay, so you're now at 41, almost 50-50. But more than that, all of those questions right now, they're so imprecise that it gives you a full range. You can't simply just can't do it by hand. It actually starts to give you a sense of certain tests, they're very precise. If you have it, they're accurate. Others, oh well, a lot of other conditions mimic it. So you're not certain about it. So for example, let's say you actually do a physical micrographia. Inability to walk heel to toe. And the glabella tab is the one that you tap and the eye keep blinking and doesn't stop. Now, with this, 96.32, the confidence interval like this, I mean, my own preference would be, don't send the person to a specialist, because you can try it out, a little bit of medicine, and see if it helps. Because you're just jamming up all the system by sending so many people out, right? I mean, it's totally within your capability, and it's based on evidence that is available out there. If the specialist said, oh yeah, I don't care about evidence, I know, well then I don't trust that specialist. Okay, so anyways, so you can actually integrate it. If you edit that e-form, you type Parkinson, and then it brings up the form. Right now, that's the easiest way to get it, right? I was going to talk a little bit more about COVID and how again, these things can help patients. We did a simple study of patients actually reporting their flu-like symptoms. And especially in MIT, we saw a demo, it's a gigantic screen. It highlights when the first flu-like symptoms appeared, and then it spread. Boom, boom, boom. And then, this is all based on personal health record. The public health is going to say, oh no, we can't do that. Again, I hope none of you work for public health, but I'm just saying, okay? And how do you, why is the, how do you guarantee that, the common question is, how do you guarantee the patient don't fudge their data? Well, no, if you really want, you can notarize your data as you go along. There is a digital notary system. You can, if you are really paranoid, go all the way and use blockchain. If you trust your Bitcoin, you can trust this record. Can you imagine going up to the border? Show me your QRS code. You say, okay, here it is. The distinction, one goes to the government and come back to verify if this thing is real or not. No. This one goes to a network of trust. This is called a network of trust. A bunch of GP who participate in this. And they verify that this is legit. Nobody's tampered with it. And yet your record never left your personal space, right? So anyway, Internet of Things, we did some really interesting things. But as you can imagine, the TAM logger was a little TikTok. Suddenly I was very interested in Mint because you can actually fit the entire system in there and you put it in the fridge. You'd be amazed. Hundreds of millions of dollars of vaccines are housed in Costco fridges across the country. And most of the time, the current standard is a nurse would register the temperature twice a day. And even the public health nurse would tell you, oh, these are fudge data. Like, how are you going to protect these valuable tests? More than that, how do you know your kids are properly vaccinated? That's why there are sporadic outbreaks, right? Anyways, and you can do your food diary, and all these things are piped right into your health record. So anyway, so I'll leave it at that. Like if you get this, you know, because next time I'm going to talk about the next cloud bit. Is that okay? Yeah, it's mostly just to share my dream, but you know, there's nothing. You're welcome. Yeah. Well, email me any of your feedback. I always value, you know, positive or negative. It would be very helpful.